Well, here we are at the NFL House in London. I'm Ruth Mortimer, Content Director at Central Media, and I've got a great panel here today to discuss content, marketing, sports marketing, social marketing, all the biggest issues of the day. So I'm going to get you guys to introduce yourselves. Maybe we could start with you, Mark.
Sure. Mark Waller. I look after the NFL's business internationally outside of the US.
Great.
Tom Prohaska. I handle Gatorade Sports Marketing out of Chicago.
Fabulous.
I'm Lewis Wiltshire. I'm Senior Director of Media Partnerships at Twitter here in London.
Lewis, I was wondering, there's 10 games broadcast on Twitter. What's that about?
So the 10 Thursday night games, so out of the Thursday night games this year, 10 of them will be simulcast on Twitter globally. We're really excited about it, so it's a brand new thing this year. So the thing that we're really excited about is that we think, and it was interesting to hear earlier on one of the sessions, the NFL themselves talking about how additive it was for broadcasters. So we think that you can clearly still watch the NFL on a 60-inch screen, and you can do that on Twitter actually, because we've now got apps on Apple TV and on the Xbox.
Yeah.
But you can also watch them on Sky Sports in the UK. But equally, if you're out, if you're in a bar, you may not sit in front of the 60-inch screen for the whole 3 and a half hour game. You can watch the games on your phone anywhere in the world on Twitter now as well, or on your laptop. And we think that's an incredibly additive experience for fans. So very excited about it, and it's gone really, really well so far with millions of people watching.
I think as well, sorry to interrupt with this, but one of the things that we thought was really appealing about it was it really speaks to the younger generation of fans who have many more options and choices, who aren't necessarily growing up with a TV in every room and their own remote control. And so the ability to take a medium like Twitter and be able to take our content to those people in the format that they want it, with the immediacy that they want it, because that's the other thing I think about this generation is they're used to getting everything as and when they want it in the format that they want it. And so for us, I think we've always pushed hard on our content to make sure it stays current.
Was there a particular reason why you picked Twitter, why the two of you worked together? What was it particularly about the Twitter platform as opposed to others?
I mean, I think from our point of view, working with the NFL, because it's a global sports property, it's one of the most popular sports in the world, it's an incredible product, and we very much feel that Twitter has always been the home of live. It's what's happening right now. And the live NFL video, I think, is a continuation of that. It's taking what was always a global sports conversation in the biggest sports bar in the world, and then actually putting that content on Twitter itself.
And I think from our perspective, there's probably two things. First of all, I think we felt it was a really big step in innovation. You didn't expect to get live games streamed on Twitter, and again, I think that was important for us. And the other thing was that the CFO of Twitter used to be the CFO at the NFL, so there was a good working relationship there. So Anthony Noto knows us, he knows what's important to us, he knew that innovation in media space was going to be key, and as a result of that, when we came to the table, we both knew what each other's goals were out of this, which I think in any partnership, whether it's a media partnership or a licensing or a sponsorship partnership, mutual goals and objectives is ultimately what makes deals work.
Yeah.
So we were very clear early on what Twitter was looking for, and I believe Anthony was very clear what we wanted.
So speaking of partnerships, so Tom, Gatorade's been a partner with the NFL for a very long time. And why do you think it's endured for such a long period of time, and how do you keep it fresh year after year?
We've been a partner with the NFL since 1983. I think we were their first sports marketing partner, and they were our first sports marketing partner. We actually grew up in the NFL. We were on the field to play with the Kansas City Chiefs in 1969, and it took a few years before I think the sports marketing people looked down and they said, boy, they're getting a lot of value down there being on the field. So we worked together to develop what that partnerships look like, and it's evolved over the years, and it's really a two-way street. We provide research for the players during training camp to learn their sweat rates and learn more about their bodies, and deliver customized solutions for games and training. And then in return, the NFL provides us great exposure globally.
Yeah, one of the keys for us with our partnerships is that they need to be fully integrated, authentic with what we do. And the beauty, obviously, of Gatorade is it's part of an athlete's regime, it's part of an athlete's preparation and recovery. So they're fully integrated. But the other great thing about most of the partners we have is they push us hard. They're constantly looking at how they move their brands and their business forward, how they grow their consumer franchises. And if you look at the partners we've got great partners. They keep us on our toes. So we learn an awful lot from our partners of how to be better at what we do. It's really important to us.
And how do you market differently when you are speaking to different sports? So if you're speaking to American football as opposed to, say, European football, how do you speak differently with Gatorade?
Well, first of all, it's the product that's actually on the field. So when you tune in an NFL game or a cricket match or rugby, you'll see Gatorade products, cups, squeeze bottles, actually on the field of play. And if there are timeouts or stoppages in play, you'll see players utilizing the product. So that's a standard.
Yep.
We look at that is ubiquity, that we would like to see 80 to 85% of all sports being Gatorade exposure on the field. In terms of speaking to the consumers, you have to speak to them differently. You have to speak to them about their sport. So you can't just have one voice because you come off as being tone deaf.
So if you're speaking to that kind of demographic, presumably social is something really important to Gatorade. What kind of things are you doing with Twitter and social?
That's a good question. So we're evolving right now. We look at it as marketing in the moment with Twitter. You have to market at the speed of sport. I think what we used to do, maybe 6 months, 8 months ago, is we were serving up organic tweets and doing quite a bit of them and hoping that they were reaching our consumer base. What we've done now is we've shifted and we've used some of the tools that Twitter has available to target consumers. So one that we just did recently when we kicked off the season in Denver was we built a content piece around Cam Newton, and it started with that disastrous press conference back after Super Bowl, and then it ended with him taking the field in Denver for the first game of the NFL season. And then in the middle was everything that he was doing to prepare for that season and get better. The way we served it up through Twitter was we targeted Carolina Panther fans and Cam Newton followers. So the engagement went through the roof. Everybody that saw it would immediately tweet back, and it was much more powerful.
And it's also very unique, the Super Bowl, for having a real focus on advertising as well. It's probably the most famous showcase of advertising. There's almost no other example I can think of where people actively tune in for the advertising as well, which I think must be an amazing asset for your partners. But is that something you feel you could globalize as well?
It is in part. Obviously, the advertising world with the brands, some brands are only in certain geographies, or they have different trademarks for the same product in different markets. So you have a lot of logistical issues to solve. But the broad principle is definitely true, and it's one of the things I think we feel most proud of is that the creation of a platform to showcase brand creativity within that context is exceptionally powerful for our advertisers and particularly for our sponsors. And we work very hard to make sure that they can get the most out of that. This year we had a huge collaboration with Pepsi around the halftime show and really gave them and us the opportunity to showcase that relationship. So it's definitely something we work with brands, but there's definitely some barriers in terms of the sort of logistics, particularly around rights. Brand rights and music rights and acting rights and things like that for the ads.
I think even where those restrictions exist geographically, there are then additional opportunities, such as on Twitter and digitally, where brands can reach consumers around an event like the Super Bowl. So before we had the live experience that we've got with the NFL now, we had a Twitter Amplify deal with the NFL, which has advertising around it, which was a collaboration between Twitter and the NFL and some brands as well. And so there are additional advertising opportunities where brands can reach consumers around an event as big as the Super Bowl that just didn't exist maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago.
And that to me, I think, is the beauty of the digital social world that we live in. That I remember when I started in the NFL, there was a real concern that digital and social would fragment your audience, that audiences would dissipate and everyone would go off and do separate things. And actually what we've seen is the opposite, is it actually aggregates an audience. People find out, oh, this is going on. Hey, the Green Bay-Chicago game's down in the fourth quarter and it's really close. Are you watching? No, I'm not. Right, well, I better go and watch. And so that, you're right, that ability to create currency and immediacy through digital and social really allows everything to resonate more than it would have done.
And so what would you say is your biggest challenge at the moment? What do you find when you're trying to market the Super Bowl or do partnerships with Twitter or Gatorade? What would you say is your big challenge?
I come back to where we started the conversation, which is that this is a year-round, fully engaged proposition that in the case of the UK is relevant for broad-scale UK consumers. So convincing our partners and our sponsors, hey, we have 14 million fans in the UK. As a city in its own right, London would have the third most NFL fans of any city in the world, including all the US cities. So those sorts of stats don't immediately spring to mind for the UK business community, who would see it as, oh, you play 3 games, and they're probably mostly Americans that go to it. So that, I think, is, from a business perspective, our challenge. From a consumer perspective, I don't often say this, but I don't see many challenges for us. I think we're in a beautiful spot in this market. We're a premium, highly aspirational sport. We're imported, we're global, we're American, and we have American relationships. And I think all of those factors resonate for the sports fan in this marketplace. And so from a consumer perspective, I think the barriers are probably ourselves, our own limitations, our own lack of vision and aspiration. That's kind of where I sit at the moment.
Excellent. Tom?
I think our biggest challenge is how we spend our communication resources, our advertising dollars. I think if 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were fully invested in network TV, building high-scale, high-value 30-second units and communicating brand value through those. That has shifted dramatically over the last few years, where the digital and social component is becoming a much larger piece of the mix, just because of our ability to target those dollars. We know that those communication messages are going right to the consumers that use our product, whereas the other one would go off and you would just sprinkle it and hopefully hit your consumers.
And what about kind of using new tech? So you were talking before about being really innovative. What about things like VR? Is that on your agenda?
Absolutely. I would hope that any new technology that is emerging is one that we're looking at. We spend a lot of time trying to see what's going to happen in the future from a technology and particularly from a media standpoint, because essentially, if you think about it, in the US alone, we have 180 million fans, but it's really 1 million fans that go to a game every week. So the vast amount of our reach is through media content. And so innovation in that space is hugely important. Interestingly, in VR, not only are we looking at it from a consumer standpoint, but from an athlete standpoint for training and getting used to simulating game experience. That's becoming a real focus. And obviously within our game, we use a lot of technology already. We have a great partnership with Microsoft on the sideline. We have coach to quarterback communications. We have video replays. So we're constantly looking at how can we improve all of that technology, both for the athletes on the field and for the fans in the stadium, because one of the things we want to make sure of is still the best place to go to experience the NFL is in the stadium. So how can you use everything that you've got from a technology standpoint to ensure that stadium experience stays truly unique? Okay,
so to finish up, because I guess you guys probably have to go and get ready. You're playing the games, right?
If only.
Okay. But it would be really good to know, what are the 3 kind of big trends for 2017 that you're going to be keeping your eyes on, looking at, and that you think marketers should be looking at themselves?
I think one is internationalisation. So I really think, we were talking about it earlier, I think the NFL have blazed a trail here, I really do. I noticed last night that the new president of UEFA has said that he's open to the possibility of playing a Champions League final in New York City. I think what's incredibly interesting is over the last year or so, we've seen in the same week at times an NFL game in London and a rugby union international in Chicago. I think that internationalisation of sport and sports breaking out of their own kind of traditional markets is very interesting, and certainly at Twitter we see that manifest itself every week. So the Premier League conversation on Twitter, the volumes of Premier League conversation coming out of markets like Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia are incredibly, well, it's mind-blowing. So I think internationalisation was one. I'm personally very interested in connected stadia. I know in a session that Mark was doing earlier, Mark Chapman talked about when he went to Levi Stadium in Santa Clara to watch the 49ers, and the whole stadium feels connected. You're able to watch replays on your phone, order merchandise and food through your seats. That to me has already been one of the biggest changes, and I think will continue. I think it's inconceivable to me that every stadium won't be connected within the next decade. So I think some of those issues, and then for us at Twitter, it's just about continuing that sense of liveness, that sense of what's happening now. For brands, we're interested in helping them to target consumers, but also in CRM and that kind of liveness of that experience. So yeah, lots to be excited about actually.
Okay, cool.
One for us, selfishly, would be clutter. The NFL does a great job of, during the broadcast, it's very clean down on the field, but many other sports you're seeing creeping in of a lot of different logos. You're starting to see logos on jerseys, you're starting to see logos and signage on the field across many different sports, which causes a lot of clutter during the broadcast and can draw away from brands that are integrated into the game. So that's one focus for us that we're monitoring. Another, I would say, would be cord cutting. We're very focused on a younger demographic, and I think that group, more than anybody, is transitioning away from broadcast television. They're watching sports with multiple devices, watching the red zone, watching a game, or following their fantasy team. I think our numbers as high as 20 to 25% of households now don't have cable TV. That would be two that I would follow.
I guess like the internationalization idea, for us, we call it boundaryless. There's just no concept anymore of boundaries, whether that's geographies or limitations on what consumers want and what they want to access. So that would be one. Timeless. Things have to be both immediate but also available for when you want it. So if you can't get it live and immediately, then you want to know that you can still go and get it, and you might want to get all of it, you might want to get part of it, you might want to get just the best bits. So timeless would be another. And then the third one, I think, for us is communal. That people want to belong to something. It was what shocked me most about Brexit. We were chatting before. What shocked me most about it was the idea that you would opt out of any sort of community that brings collectivism together. It seems an odd time to do it because it feels, it's what I love about Twitter. You can communicate and connect with any community you want. And if you can't find them, they're going to find you. And that community aspect of it, to me, is such an integral part of what we do.
It's one of the most powerful things. So, I've sat there at 12:30 at night on a Sunday night for the last however many years watching the NFL when everyone in my house is asleep. And 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you'd have been alone. Just me and my dog watching the NFL at 30 minutes past midnight. Now I feel like I'm in a community of millions in the greatest sports bar in the world. So I agree with you, community is such a big one.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.